Hello, everybody. And I think we are now exactly 1:15. So let's start our EIWO webinar. I started already in the pre-talk a little bit to say that that is the 9th webinar of the EIWO program. It's about exclusion and inequality in late working life. Of course, with participants in Poland, Germany, UK, and Sweden on the research side. And I also see people from the advisory policy advisory committee here. So hi, Annette. And did I miss anybody else from? No, maybe there may be more in the end. Yeah, it's about exclusion, inequality in late work life, and of course, skills, upskilling, reskilling plays an important role in this context. So that's why we have today's webinar with a topic on skills requirements. In times of demographic and technological change. I think this is summarized correctly. It's not the exact title. And of course, for us, the perspective of late work is key, but it's not the only perspective, in particular, not when you're looking at life courses and trajectories. And I'm happy to have Jolanta, Perek, and Magdalena. No, I have a problem with your name. I practiced before. Poteralska?
Poteralska.
Yeah, okay,
that's
sorry.
Difficult surname even for Polish people.
At least that's always a problem for me to have these long afternames, last names, family names there. And we have three exciting experts here, which is Oliver Stettes from the Institut der Deutschen, the German Economic Institute, not a German name, but that you have also a German name, of course, in Cologne. We have Stephen Evans from the Learning and Work Institute in the UK, and Giovanni Russo from the European Center for the Development of Vocational Training, called Cedefop, which is much easier to pronounce for me. And we start as usual with a scientific input from the research team. And as we said, time is limited. We ask for short inputs and to allow also for a discussion in the end, in order not to make it just a passive experience for those that join us. And Jolanta and Magdalena, please start.
Yeah, so in the meantime, I think that Magda will be uploading presentation, or you just will show the presentation. I would like to welcome all of you. And in fact, this is, I'm with great pleasure would like to introduce Magda, and she will have a presentation on both of us. So Magda, the screen is yours.
So good afternoon, everyone. And again, thank you for inviting us today. Today, I will be talking about, as already introduced, about skills in technological demographic change. And I will be focusing on skills from the perspective of employers and people at working age in particular. I'm Magda Poteralska, and this study has been done together with Professor Jolanta Perek Białas. So very briefly through the agenda, I will be talking about context of our research, aims of our research, data, descriptive statistics, results, and conclusions. Okay, so in terms of the context of our research, and of course, these are only selected works. We know that there is much broader scope of studies and analysis on those topics. But we know that when we talk about older workers, we know that they can be less adaptable. They can have obsolete skills, eroding skills, or decreased productivity. Sometimes we also talk about job insecurities that can lead to early retirement. They can be less innovative in working with IT tools or subject of ageism, discriminatory practices in workplace. They can also face barriers to mobility, or once they lose their job, it's more difficult for them to find a new one. So this is one side. On the other side, we've got this technological transformation, demographic transformation. And there is research that shows that by 2027, between 35% and 65% of tasks will be automated, likely will be automated, impacting around 44% of current skills. We also know that even this year, even 77% of organizations worldwide, 66% in Poland in particular, will face challenges in securing workers having the right skills. So taking these factors into account, we know that those have a potential to make older workers even more vulnerable in the working place in the labor market. So within the aims of our studies, there are two that I'm going to present today. The first one is to identify how different skills are important for Polish employers. And the second one, to analyze the differences in self-evaluation of different skills by different age groups, focusing on those 50 plus. So we use the data of balance of human capital, which is a study conducted by Polish Agency for Enterprise Development together with Jagiellonian University. And this is a study that monitors both supply and demand of skills and competencies in the Polish labor market. It comprises 3 areas: research on people at working age, employers and companies providing training and development services. There have been 2 editions of the study. The third one is scheduled to be launched between 2024 and 2029. Moving forward, I would like to briefly talk about descriptive statistics. For our study, we used data, mainly data of 2021, study of employers and study of people at working age. As for the study of employers, there was more than 3,600 organizations of different industries, different sizes, working modes. And as for study of people at working age, we've got more than 2,500 people, including almost 1,000 people, 50 plus. So moving to the results section, I'm going to start with importance of skills from the perspective of employers. So here you can see the overall ranking of importance of skills from the perspective of employers. So from those most important to those the least important, these are mean scores, and the employers were asked to consider the most critical, the most important employee in the company, in the organization, and evaluate the importance of skills from the perspective of this role, where 1 was not important and 5 was very important. And as we can see, the top skills, or rather soft skills, readiness to take responsibility for task performance, time management, functionality, independent organization of work. So these were the top 3, but also learning new things and being communicative were important. And what is also worth to mention here is that these first 5 skills were also among the top 3 skills across all the industries, just in different configuration, different sequence. And with the yellow dot, I highlighted the top skills mentioned by employers in 2019. So we can see that for the first 2, there was no change. And in 2019, there was also being communicated in the podium, but it dropped in 2021. So from this slide, we can see that at the moment for Polish employers, soft skills are the most important. Next, we also checked how much importance of skills changed over time between 2019 and 2021. And what is different to the previous slide, we see that in terms of change in importance, these are technical skills that improved the most, that changed the most. Here you can see operating specialized computer programs in the first place, using computer, tablet, smartphone, performing advanced mathematical calculations. So these were the top 3, but also learning new things, coordinating the work of others. And again, similar situation, the top 5 skills in this overall ranking were also among the top 3 across all the industries, just in different configuration, different sequence. So here again, while the most important were soft skills, we see that technical skills grew the most in importance over the period of analysis. And in our study, we identified skill constructs, 3 skill constructs, which were technical skills, using computer, tablet, smartphone, operating specialized computer programs, performing advanced mathematical calculations, management, resolving conflicts between people, coordinating the work of others, and a list of non-technical skills, soft skills, such as coping with stressful situations, learning new things, teamwork, team management. And so we checked what were the determinants of evaluating or importance of this particular skill construct. So as for the technical skills, technical construct, we see that the most explanatory power had industry and specialist services in particular, but also remote work and training budget were important here. For non-technical skills, so typical soft skills, this was mainly industry, and we can see that education, healthcare, social assistance, and specialist services. And also for management, industry was the most important determinant, again, education and healthcare and social assistance, but also remote work. And as for the second part of our analysis, here we can see self-evaluation of skills. This is for respondents of age 50 plus. They were asked to evaluate their skills, where one was very low level and 5 was very high level. We can see that these are the same skills that we evaluated for employers. And also for reference, here with the green dot, we highlighted those skills that were top important for employers. And with the blue arrow, we highlighted those skills that grew in importance the most over the period of analysis. So as we can see, those that were evaluated the highest by people 50 plus were easily connecting with people, independent organization of work, and readiness to take responsibility for task performance. We see that 2 of those skills were also highly valued by employers. And what's more, the bottom 3 are typical technical skills, those that were evaluated by them the lowest. So using computer, tablet, smartphone, performing advanced mathematical calculations, or operating specialized computer programs. And here we can also see self-evaluation of skills by different age groups. And all the differences, mean differences, were statistically significant. We can see that the biggest gaps between people 50 plus and younger generations were for operating specialized computer programs or using computer, tablet, smartphone, but also learning new things. So we see the biggest gaps are for technical skills, growing importance for employers. The smallest gaps were for easily connecting with people, resolving conflicts between people, so more interpersonal qualities, but also time management and functionality. Next, we also verified whether there were some differences for people 50 plus and for men and women. And although there were some statistical differences between them, we can see that from mathematical point of view, those differences are not that big, right? The evaluation was very similar for both men and women. And this is the last view. We also checked the self-evaluation for people 50 plus by education. And here we can clearly see that there is huge gap between people with primary education and tertiary education for, again, technical skills, for performing advanced mathematical calculations, operating specialized computer programs, using computer, smartphone, tablet, smartphone. So for those, we had the biggest gaps, and the smallest gaps were for easily connecting with people, teamwork, and coping with stressful situations. So again, technical skills, here the gap was the most pronounced. And so in terms of conclusions, we see that both technical and non-technical skills are critically important for employers, just for different reasons. We see that technical skills became more and more fundamental for employability and for integration of people into this human-machine ecosystem. But soft skills are those skills that make us irreplaceable by technology, make us unique. And as for the moment, those are the most important for Polish employers, although technical skills grow in importance the most. We see that the type of industry, working mode, but also availability of training are the main determinants of evaluation of different skill sets, importance of skill sets. There is a gap in technical skills, what we saw from analysis, and here especially between people 50 plus and younger generations, but also between older workers with various levels of education. And here we can see that this gap can be somehow bridged, closed, or minimized by proper education and training programs, both upskilling, reskilling, lifelong learning. We saw there are proven techniques, training techniques for older people, such as coaching, such as learning by doing, such as organization of trainings in bigger groups that are effective for those people. So this is what is available, this is what we know. And the last one, the soft skills of older individuals, which we saw were also highly valued by employers, can create some additional synergies, new synergies in multi-generational teams, especially in the context of knowledge sharing, experience, cooperation, or communication. Thank you.
Thanks a lot for your presentation. I think it was quite impressive to see it from the Polish side, and I was always wondering, always thinking from a comparative perspective, how this could differ between the countries, or if you assume that that is a very specific picture that you paint. Can you say something to this, or do you have something some comparison at the moment, or?
The study which was used, the analysis, is unique in Europe because we are doing it over currently. That's the third wave of 6 years of financing by the government. So in fact, we managed already have external funding for the study, and you see the sample size is quite impressive with terms of having so many data, but we don't know exactly the same study because we focus on human capital aspects in that study. So that's quite specific for the demands of the public institution, which is somehow governing and funding. The OECD was interested in the study, but I'm not sure that in other countries a kind of follow-up. But as you notice, even we have such sample size, there are some issues from the statistical point of view, which could be always improved. But so far, in fact, based on this study, if I can add, a lot of different programs and recommendations are implemented as real measures in Poland. So in fact, in many different agendas and programs, this study are directly mentioned.
Yeah, I was just thinking about the next presentations because, or the next contributions, because we have also the German and the UK perspective and probably European perspective then on it. And I just want to hand over to Oliver Stettes from not the Institut für Deutsche Wirtschaft, but from the German Economic Institute in Cologne. Sorry, I always jump into this.
No problem at all, Andreas. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for the invitation. It's a pleasure, and I share my screen. So my presentation consists of 3 parts. So as I do not know how familiar you are with the situation in Germany, I would like to start with presenting some selected key facts concerning the employment situation of people shortly before and shortly after retirement, and on the retirement decisions employees are taking. In my second part, I give you a brief insight what companies do as a workforce age and how this can influence the perceptions of HR officers, managers, supervisors concerning what are obstacles in transition processes, and if these obstacles correlate with an aging workforce. And finally, I briefly present some information on the employment of silver workers and on factors which may prevent companies from expanding employment of these workers. Silver workers means these are employees and simultaneously receive pension payments. Well, so although we have been discussing the challenges posed by demographic change for a long time, 20 years and longer, we had been talking most of the time about the scenario, and this is completely different from nowadays. So demographic change is here, its impact is visible. For example, in Germany, the total number of people aged between 15 and 24 is not sufficient to replace all the employees that are expected to retire in the coming 10 years. And we see it concerning the proportion of employees age 55 and above. So this proportion has significantly increased over the last years. And the latter has come along with the overall increase of the employment rate of people aged between 55 and 64. In 2023, it totaled at approximately 75%. This is somewhat higher than the EU average, but it's notably lower than the employment rate of people between 25 and 54, which totaled roughly at 85%. In the lower parts of the figure, you can see the corresponding employment rates of the oldest group, 65 and above, and it's also notably lower than that of employees or persons between 25 and 64. And the lower employment rates of older workers in comparison to that of younger cohorts results, among others, from early retirement decisions. And so when we have a look at the official data, we see that almost 4 in 10 employees actually retire before reaching their statutory retirement age. And the 24% of whom do so without any deductions in the pension payments. So because they have 45 years of 45 working or equivalent years, and with 45 years you are entitled to receive regular, complete pension payments. And we assume that the prevalence of early retirement is expected to continue because our most recent employer survey from May 2024 showed that it is a very popular feature among employees of all age groups, and we observe that the proportion of employees who intend to voluntarily retire before reaching the retirement age is notably exceeds the proportion of persons who expect or believe that they cannot work until reaching the statutory retirement age, for example, due to health problems. So, and how do German companies deal with this situation? And to answer this question, I'd like to refer to selected evidence from our regular company survey, or properly speaking, from a wave we conducted in 2019. The following findings are weighted in order to obtain representative figures for the universe of German companies with 5 and more employees. And we see that around 1/3 of the German companies pursue a long-term systematic human resource planning approach. And where this occurs, the human resource management is significantly more likely to adapt to flexible and differing needs and preferences of employees of different age and different age groups. And you can see the corresponding shares on the left-hand side of the slide. It's 82 in comparison to 59. And we also observe that companies that align the HR management in this regard and towards different age-specific needs are more likely to adopt specific HR practices and policies which directly address both the challenges and the benefits arising with an aging workforce. And this applies particularly to, for example, implementing flexible modes of work, such as job rotation, telework, mobile work, to shaping a work environment that enable employees to automatically and flexibly learn on the job, and to, for example, designing individual career paths that, for example, allow employees to gradually hand over managerial or other responsibilities to, for example, younger colleagues. And the general approach and attitude of HR departments, managers, supervisors have also an impact on the perceptions what may hamper transition processes. So we see, well, you can see on the left-hand side of the slide how many companies are in general confronted with specific obstacles when they initiate transitions. For example, that they report there is a lack of skills at the side of employees, or there is a lack of willingness to change. And it is very interesting to learn from our econometric analysis that an increasing proportion of older employees itself does not represent any obstacle to transformation. So we only find a hump-shaped correlation with respect to a lack of willingness. But we don't find any significant correlation between the proportion of older workers and a reported lack of skills. So that means that we have no convincing evidence that the skills of older employees do not fit the requirements of a transformed working environment in general. I will get back to this issue when I talk about silver work. It's quite interesting. Furthermore, we can see that the introduction of job rotation or other flexible mode of work strengthens the willingness to change, and that shaping a working environment that is conducive to easy learning on the job can prevent employees' skills from falling short of the job requirements. And that means, from our point of perspective, that companies can influence the willingness and the ability to change by those HR policies and practices which can be deemed appropriate when dealing with an aging workforce. Well, there's a third correlation remaining, which is quite difficult to interpret. It's a positive correlation between the reported lack of skills and the designing of individual career paths. And it's difficult to interpret because it could be twofold. The finding may indicate that if skill deficits are identified, then individual career planning is necessary to deal with this issue. This is one explanation, or it is the other way around. When superiors, managers, and employees systematically discuss these issues and how individual careers should evolve when a working environment has been changed, then, and perhaps only then, a potential shortfall of competences may be detected. And that brings me to my third part, to the employment of already retired person. And according to our survey, the same survey in 2019, almost half of the companies employed civil workers at that time, or had employed them in the previous 5 years. And to our surprise, and this is quite contrary to the situation of dealing with an aging of workforces, the companies with a long-term, a systematic human resource planning approach are not significantly more likely to employ civil workers. And we believe that this result, this finding suggests that civil workers are still more likely to be employed due to ad hoc reasons. We also assume that civil work is supposed to mainly serve the knowledge transfer from retired experienced workers to successors, as Magda had referred to in her fourth conclusion. And because we see that the implementation of mixed-age teams positively correlates with the incidence of part-time work of civil workers. Finally, we asked the companies why they did not expand the employment of retired persons. So, and the responses suggest that a lack of appropriate skills does not play a particularly important role. So, and this corresponds with the aforementioned finding that companies with a larger proportion of older workers are not significantly more likely to regard skill and competence deficits as an obstacle to transformation. And in addition, our estimates show that a lack of skills can be prevented by implementing mixed-age teams. So from our point of view, mixed-age teams signal that the firm appreciates the experience and the knowledge of retired workers, of civil workers very, very much. And the companies are very keen to having them transferred to younger colleagues. Likewise, the transfer from fresh knowledge and fresh competences from the young to the old ones. We see also that 1/3 of the companies encounter a lack of interest of employees. This evidence fits very well to the figures concerning early retirement decisions that we referred to at the beginning of the presentation. But we learn from our econometric estimates that creating a working environment that is conducive to learning can persuade employees to stay with the company beyond their retirement age. Finally, and from the perspective of our responding firms, I turn to the most relevant obstacle for expanding employment of civil workers, meaning labor and social legislation. It is a very complex phenomenon, especially regarding the employment of older workers and civil workers. And apparently, the regulations seem to prevent many companies from employing civil workers. And this holds particularly for ad hoc employment, which is not systematically planned in advance. And in this respect, we assume that the employment protection legislation in Germany, specific regulations on fixed-term contracts, may play an important role in this regard. Unfortunately, our 2019 survey does not inform about what specific regulations may hamper or have this adverse impact on employment of civil workers. But we will return to this issue in our coming summer survey 2024. Well, I come to the end, and I'd like to emphasize two selected conclusions. The first one is a political issue. We have to talk about raising the statutory retirement age and the abolishment of early retirement schemes for two reasons in Germany. Firstly, the time horizon of the remaining working life strongly affects employment and training decision of both employers and employees. And secondly, we know from research, and our own research confirms this, that continued employment right before reaching the retirement age is a strong, or it increases significantly the likelihood of remaining employed with the same employer after retirement. And you can imagine that both issues, raising the statutory retirement age and abolishment of early retirement schemes, is hotly debated in Germany, but it's back on the agenda right now. And turning to the companies, I would say companies are supposed to design their HR policies and practices so that an extension of effective working life towards the statutory retirement age and a prolongation of working life beyond this age are possible and attractive. And this can be done by, for example, three issues or three topics. And I'd like to emphasize the last one. It is very important to expand employment of silver workers by timely addressing whether the employment contract can be prolonged beyond the statutory retirement age. And it's very important to timely negotiating the corresponding terms with the employee to avoid problems with employment protection legislation in Germany. Thank you very much for your audience and attention. And I'm looking forward to your questions and the debate. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks a lot for this quite comprehensive overview. There's of course questions that immediately can be raised. Is there any question in the audience or comments, remarks? Jolanta, was that a hand or what was it? Was just cleaning your screen? Okay.
No screening, but I have an iPad, so I do not see everything.
Okay.
So.
Yeah, then I postpone this to the discussion afterwards. And thank you very much for this overview from a German perspective. And
there's a question, I suppose. Hans-Martin has raised his hand.
Sorry.
Yes, hello. Good evening or good day to all. My name is Hans-Martin Hasselmann. I'm an occupational health physician at the University of Wuppertal. We are also investigating the older workers in a large survey. And Oliver and Stettes, I just wanted to ask you, your estimation was that about 1/3 of the German population didn't want to work until statutory retirement age. According to our data, and it's a large nationwide representative survey of the baby boomer generation. We have just asked them the last time 2 years ago. It's almost 9,000 people we have asked. And according to our data, it is 2/3 who wouldn't even want to work until the age of 65. So I think, and then the question is, of course, what is statutory retirement age? Because even today, it is maybe 10 or 15% who really are working until 66 years of age. And most of all the others are leaving early. So to say, apart from this extra work, which the people may be doing, then also this low capacity work that some workers do besides drawing the pension. So I think the estimation is even worse. And then the conclusions you have drawn for the institutions, they are interesting, but I wonder how you would implement that. And so what we are proposing right now on the basis of our experiences of the last 10 years of research is that you have to start early with the workers in the companies. And we say that you have to talk about the last 10, let's say 10 working years that the people have, because we are not really dealing with the time past retirement age yet in our research because the cohorts are too young. But one might even extend that along with your idea of increasing employment past retirement age, that you even prepare the workers also for that. but also the last working years, let's say the last 10 or even 15 years, are years where it's important to get a dialogue ongoing between the worker and the organization. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. I totally agree to this point, and it's even better to begin the talks before, let's say, at an age of 40 or 45. So it's to prepare the people and to have a look timely, and to have a timely look what is possible concerning working towards the statutory retirement age and even after that. So I totally agree. So what we know from, we asked the companies, and there's one specific regulation in employment protection legislation which may prevent companies from well, rehiring retired persons. So there's a specific regulation which is completely okay for people aged 30 or 35, but it's maybe completely wrong for this group of elder people.
For me, there's immediately the question for the possibility of these strategies for all types of companies. Isn't that also something that depends not just on branch or sectors, but also on simply on size? And if you think about the structure of companies, I mean, there's a huge number of smaller companies that probably are not able to have this long-term planning, which is of course essential. That's what the data says.
Of course, size matters. Definitely, but from my point of view, the most important issue is the attitude towards the employees and towards an aging of the workforce and how to deal with that. And from our point of view, this attitude completely changed when comparing responses of companies today and, for example, 30 years ago. 30 years ago, many companies were convinced that they could forego of older employees, and there was an incentive to hire them earlier.
Yeah, fully agree. So let's say I fully agree and hand over to Stephen Evans. Sorry for putting this. For Annette, was this directly to?
Yeah, it was just directly to that one.
Just try make sure.
Isn't it this discount rates, yeah, that you offer something for employees to early retirement? I mean, this is something similar to the golden handshake. Yeah, it's just like we cannot do it anymore because it's forbidden. I mean, we had that yesterday. Yeah, but it is a kind of the same measure. It is like getting rid of them. Yeah, so discount rates don't help either. I mean, you made it clear anyway, but I think it's just that this is it's always carrots and sticks. It's always like do you want to get them, and if you can't hire, or if you can't get rid of them with the golden handshake anymore, then you give them other options in order to let them leave. Yeah, and it's also, I think, the working conditions. I mean, Maria is with me because we made a kind of we made a chapter in the book on aging policies, and we figured out that working conditions are really the core. It's not skilling, yeah, it's not upskilling. It's how the workplaces are, designed and agreed with, and in both ways, rather than only upskilling. But this is also clear. It was already mentioned. Yeah. So just a small comment.
Thanks a lot. And nevertheless, hand over to Stephen now, and just ask for your contribution. You're the chief executive of the Learning and Work Institute in London, and the focus is on lifelong learning, at least. Of course, lifelong learning is relates to skills, but it has a different connotation in a way, and also not necessarily to employer strategies. So I'm curious for your presentation. Thanks.
Yes, thank you, and thank you for the invitation to take part this afternoon. I think it's always really helpful to share experiences and learn from other European countries. So I'm very pleased to have the invite this afternoon, and I was nodding away to all the previous presentations. Lots of the good points have now been made, but I can say that I agree with them. And just very quickly to say, so the Learning and Work Institute is an independent charity. We do research, policy work, evaluation, lots of things like that relating to learning, skills and employment. We operate across the UK. We've been around for 102 years, so quite a long time, and also work with lots of European partners as well, including through the European Association for the Education of Adults. I'll try not to take it personally that someone has left immediately as I speak, but I know people have got other things to go to. So I'm now going to try and share some slides to run through. Right, there we go. Can we see the slides okay?
Looks perfect.
Brilliant, perfect, thank you. Oh, although I can't get them to move. There we go. So yeah, so I was just going to run through a little bit of the UK context, which is not dissimilar to some of the contexts that have been described. Talk a little bit about some of the policy and a little bit about where next as well. So this chart is a similar picture actually to what Oliver was talking about there in the German context. So in common with lots of other countries, we're seeing an aging population and an increase in those older age groups, and particularly people past the state pension age. So we're going from 3.5 workers for every retired person in the 2010s to 2.3 workers for every retired person in the 2040s. So there's a big demographic challenge. This has lots of implications for health and social care, for working lives, for retraining, for how we manage all of that economic change that's going on, for a whole bunch of other stuff as well. But I thought that just give you a little bit of that demographic picture, as I say, fairly common to lots of other countries I know. Big implications for the education system, by the way, because you're going to see this dip in younger age groups as we get through towards the 2030s and particularly into the 2040s. So we're going to have lots of schools that don't have so many children in them, and are we going to close them down? Are we going to repurpose the cash elsewhere? What are we going to do? So these are some pretty big questions. I thought I'd just talk a little bit about patterns of career change now, because there's kind of helping people to stay in their existing jobs or similar sorts of jobs, but there's also, if we're going to have these longer working lives, and we've got lots of economic change going on all the time, people are going to have to switch careers more often. So this shows the proportion of employees that move to another job either in the same sector, that's the blue dots, or a different sector, that's the orange dots, each quarter. So you can see it's about sort of 1.5% per quarter, the orange dots. Has gone down a bit over time. And there's always lots of stories about sort of job hopping millennials and everybody's changing career all the time. Actually, certainly in the UK, the rate of career changing, the rate of people switching to different sectors is lower than it was pre the global financial crisis. I think some of that is growth in the UK economy has been rubbish since 2008. That's my technical economist term. So just really woeful economic performance since 2008. And therefore, there's fewer opportunities for people to shift onto. But it gives a sense of the scale of career change. So about sort of 5 or 6% of adults in the UK change sectors or occupations as well each year. That's I haven't put in the international chart, but I think that puts us sort of top half of the OECD league tables, but behind countries like Sweden and Denmark and others. And we think these lines are going to have to go up because of that aging population and those longer working lives. Should say again, I could have given you about 5,000 charts, but you'll be pleased to know I haven't. But this pattern varies quite a bit between sector as well. So sectors were mentioned earlier. So much bigger turnover in retail and hospitality, which are really big employers in the UK economy. lots of people switching between retail, hospitality, and health and social care as well. And this brings some challenges. So, for example, if people can get more money in retail, they might switch from social care to retail, but this leaves us short of social care for that aging population. So different patterns of change within different sectors. The other thing is, so I mentioned the number of adults that are changing sector or occupation each year. Now we found that on average, those adults face a £3,300 drop in their annual earnings when they're doing so. So to move across, you have to take a step down in your income. And this is difficult if you're in mid-career or later career. If you've got rent or a mortgage or family commitments or whatever, can you afford to take that drop in your earnings? So when we come on to policy, I think one of the challenges is how do we help people in mid or later career to deal with the risk of switching careers or changing jobs and the potential drop in income that they get. And I mentioned retail and hospitality as really high turnover sectors. Those are also low productivity sectors, and retail and hospitality lower productivity in the UK than in the US, for example. So how do we improve productivity in those sectors when we've got this really high churn and turnover in people? So for me, this topic is all part of that bigger picture of the demographic trends, the fact we're trying to make our economy grow better than it has done for the last 15 years, and how do we support people to do that when they're facing potentially quite big drops in their income. So challenges, and I should say on the policy side, so the Prime Minister announced yesterday there will be a general election in the UK on July the 4th. So the opinion polls currently suggest we will have a change of government to a Labour government after 14 years of Conservative government. So all of this may change in 6 weeks' time, but we'll see. I think the challenges remain whoever the government is. So firstly, we've had big cuts, austerity cuts by the government in the adult skills budget that helps people to improve their skills or to switch careers or whatever. So a 20% cut in England since 2010. So skills policy has devolved to the other nations of the UK. So I'm focusing on England in particular here. So there's fewer training opportunities than there were for people, particularly when they're 50 plus. Secondly, employers are investing a lot less in training per employee, so 26% less than they were in the mid-2000s. And UK employers spend about half the EU average on training. So we're underinvesting in training. That's not helping people in mid or later careers to either stay in work or update their skills or switch across to a different career. That's partly related to the woeful economic performance we've had since 2008. Now, we do have a UK-wide apprenticeship levy. So every employer, every large employer whose salary bill is over £3 million a year has to pay 0.5% of their payroll into an apprenticeship fund, and they can either spend that on apprenticeships or it goes to the Treasury for the government to spend on whatever they feel like. So that's good because it means employers have to engage in training, but you'd think an apprenticeship levy would mean more support for young people and the mid-later career people missing out. The opposite has happened in England in particular, where firms have just kept investing in already highly skilled older people and not in lower skilled people or younger people. So we think this needs to change. And indeed, the Labour opposition has proposed changes to do that. So that's a set of slightly depressing things that are going on. One more depressing thing, there you go. So this is the chart of adult skills spend in England since the early 2000s. And you can see the big dips after 2010 as the new government at that time imposed austerity on public services. You can now see it's increasing a bit again, but not enough to make up the cuts that have been made since 2010. So that's the depressing bit. What are we going to do about all of this? So there's some real opportunities for whoever wins the next general election. The first is we've already got an established training levy, that apprenticeship levy on employers. So we can build on that, help it to support more career change or older workers to stay in their work or young people to get the first steps on the career ladder. We've got a new lifelong learning entitlement that gives adults of any age a loan to cover 4 years of higher education tuition fees. So tuition fees for university are about £9,000 per year in England. This is England again. So that should help more adults to improve their higher education. We think we need to learn below higher education as well. We've also got real increases in the minimum wage. So our national minimum wage is now 2/3 of median wages. It's one of the highest bites of minimum wages in the OECD. And that ought to give employers more incentive to invest in people and help people stay in work and use the skills that they've got. Hasn't quite worked out like that yet, but we've got a chance to do that. And we've got a higher employment rate than many other countries. And I haven't showed this chart, but it's a bit similar to the picture in Germany, where the biggest growth in employment in the last 20 years is 50 to 64-year-olds and 65 plus. It's massively gone up. A lot of that has been increases in the state pension age. And one of the challenges is the pension age is going to keep going up, but not by as much. So how do we get better support for people who do drop off before that state pension age, struggle to get back to work? And just lastly, a little reflection on some of the other speakers, because again, lots of commonalities. One of the big challenges, I think, for us is there are some employees that are great at taking on older workers or helping people stay in work. And then there are others that aren't. And it's how do you get to the ones who aren't or who don't value it? How do you support the smaller firms, which account for 90% of firms in the UK, about 1/3 of employment? And also the match between the work that people want to do and the work that's available. We think there's a big challenge to get employers to change how they recruit and how they structure jobs. We've had a big increase in economic inactivity amongst older workers since the pandemic. And lots of those older workers say they would be interested in coming back to work, but it's got to be work that suits them, whether that's flexibility for caring responsibilities or health problems, or something that matches their skills or something that they want to do. So there's a big challenge for employers there to think about how they design and offer work as well. So, oh, there you go. So that was just basically, this last slide is me saying what I've just said there. So lots of changes that need making, I think, to the system. There's an opportunity to do it, but those are some of the gaps that I'd reflect, and again, in common with other countries. So very interested to hear other people's experiences as well. So thank you, and I shall stop there and try and stop sharing the slides.
Thanks a lot. This was another quite comprehensive overview. You mentioned the potential change in government. How dependent is this from the government, or how stable is this due to the economic and demographic situation? Just a guess, probably. We all don't know, but what would you guess?
Yeah, so I think that whoever wins the election is going to have the same in tray of problems. So the population is aging, economic inactivity is up since the pandemic, economic growth has been rubbish since 2008. These are all the same set of problems, whoever's in power, but I think what they do about it might look a bit different. So the Labour Party, who are on track to win, but who knows, and opinion polls can be wrong, they've said they want more local control over employment and skills support, for example, including a focus on older workers. So we've got a very centralised system at the moment. For England, a lot of it is controlled by the UK government, and the local mayors have less control. Labour has said they want those mayors to have more control. So you might see some differences there. You might also see, so the Labour Party has proposed reforming the skills system and the apprenticeship levy, so it's more flexible for employers to choose the training that would suit them best. So that would look quite different. So I think the problems are the same, but the solutions will look a bit different. But also the context of low growth and tough public finances means there's not going to be massive overnight changes either. Hopefully that answers your question.
It definitely is a try to answer the question. So of course there is not an overnight change in this, but it's of course an issue to ask for the policy component behind it and the margins that are there. Do I have another hand somewhere? Otherwise, I hand over to Giovanni. And there are you? Are you ready to take over?
Yes, thank you.
From the Cedefop perspective, I think you will have an employability perspective, if I remember correctly, at least, and take a European comparative view. Is this what
Yes,
I can expect? Yeah.
I'll have an employability perspective, but if I had known it before, I could have changed more or less the my presentation, because it's very much in line of what we've just heard. So before I start, I must say that I'm not working myself on silver workers. I'm more looking at the way skills are utilized within companies, and I will take this perspective. So what I'll do today is I present the current policy narrative about employability skills. Then I will challenge it, and this will become interesting, the next point, when I introduce the alternative narrative stressing the importance of the workplace context for skill utilization, because I make a difference here between having the skills and utilizing the skills. And then I'll have implications, but these are not suggestions, these are question marks. There are questions, and that's it. So what is the current narrative? It's based on 3 pillars. First of all, they assume that skills are important to firms, that the organization can actually source these skills from the labor market, and that therefore, to stay employable, workers need to have the skills demanded in the labor market. Okay, this is what the narrative, as I understand it at least, or what is shared in the policy circles. Of course, the demand side of the labor market are organizations. And so the assumption is that they are able to express a sort of a homogeneous demand for a skill set, something that that is homogeneous. And so when this happens, the educational system can mass produce these skills quite efficiently. So the policy approach to employability is actually to let organizations lead the demand on the assumption that if they don't find the skills they need, they're held back in their performance. And then the policy steers the supply of these skills in the directions desired by the employers. Okay, the first challenge: are organizations able to deploy these homogeneous skills, the demand for skills? Okay. My understanding is that this is something that we can challenge, because organizations are tremendously different. And I'm not talking about the skills needed in the, how to say, in the service sector, like a supermarket, that totally different from those in a car factories. So here in these pictures, we have on bicycle manufacturers in the Netherlands. To the right, you have Koga. And here an employee builds a whole bike. Okay, they assemble all the parts, and then they start from the frame to the end product. And to the left, we have Gazelle. And this is an assembly line approach where the average tasks is about 90 seconds. So you can imagine that the demand for skills in these 2 companies doing exactly the same product exactly in the same place are quite different. The other thing I want to draw attention to is the pictures on the bottom. And if you look at the picture on the bottom, so if you look on the left-hand side, you have 2 pictures. Top is Gazelle now, bottom is Gazelle 1920. And you can see there is very little difference. So this 1920 is the heyday of the Tayloristic approach, let's say, scientific management. And you can see that there is a very long shadow of this approach, managerial approach to today. So this is something that we can generalize. This is not only happening in the Netherlands in the bicycle construction sector. I mean, in the US, you have the distinction between Costco and now I don't know, Walmart and Costco. Okay, and actually this is generalized even further, because if you take narrowly defined industries like nails at 4 digits, then you can see that inside this homogeneous, so to say, sector, there are various group of firms. And if you take the productivity level in the group of best firm and compare to that the productivity level in the group of the worst firm, you can see that the ratio is about 2. So the best firms are twice more productive than the worst firms. This difference is also recognized in the management literature when you have the resource-based view of the organization. So that basically organizations compete by combining different organizational resources or combining them differently. The same resources but combined differently. So all this difference is reflected in their demand for skills. So if organizations use their skills differently, it's also likely that they implement technology differently. So let's say, suppose as an organization, I'm not very much interested in leveraging human capital to be competitive on the labor market. You can imagine I will introduce a technology in such a way that it replaces worker. Okay. In organizations instead, where human capital or workers are utilized their skills are utilized to get to the competitive advantage, then we can imagine that the same technology might be introduced in a way that increases the marginal product of labor. So the point of this is that maybe there isn't even deterministic approach or deterministic impact of technology on skills demand. Depending on where the technology is being introduced, there might be different effects on demand. And because we have this long shadow of Taylorism on the way that the workplace is organized, then we also have to ask ourselves when we take this approach on employability skills, about which companies are responsible for the demand of labor. Because if we have a majority of, let's say, Tayloristic organization organized on a Tayloristic manner, maybe this is not what we want. Huh? So this is a policy question, basically. So let me spend a few minutes on what does this mean. What do I mean when I say that organizations use worker skills for competitive advantage? So this is when organizations know how to attain organizational goal or to be competitive through people. Okay. These are organizations in which performance is important, and you'll know this because these organizations, when they're going to tell you that going, do the extra mile or going beyond the call of duty, it is a thing. We have cultures driving this type of behaviors. So when you hear this and performance is important, we have to look at two types of performance. Performance has two margins. Task performance is the performance in the job description, in the tasks contained in the job description, so in the work for which we've been hired. And then there is another margin of performance, what is called contextual performance. And these are voluntary behaviors that help the smooth unfolding of operations in the workplace. Okay, this is something that cannot be mandated. These are behaviors that are very important for organizations to work well. On these behaviors, in the past, in the 60s, there was the concept of learning curve in organizations. So you will have a new technology implemented, and they would see that over time, as from the moment the technology is implemented, there will be an enormous productivity growth in the first 6 to 8 months. Contextual performance is the type of performance that help the learning curve to take place. But because these behaviors are voluntary, they need to be encouraged. So what is that we need contextual performance first? The contextual performance needs to mesh the human capital. So when organizations say that the skills are important, they're not referring to my individual skills or the skills of an individual workers. They refer to the organizational resource, human capital. And so the whole is more than the sum of its part. And how do you transform the individual human capital into an organizational resource is through certain behaviors. For example, you ask workers to share knowledge, to help each other, to have a proactive behavior at work when there are unexpected situations. to contribute to solving problems, transferring knowledge to younger colleagues. These are all a set of behavior that help transforming the human capital of the individual into a broader resource that the organization can use to be competitive on the market. This resource, the contextual performance, also help this resource deliver the results to the organizations. How? Because through a mechanism where you can see workers apply the skills to learn how to increase the efficiency of the production process and delivering this suggestion to management. So you need to have the channels through which workers who have been skilled, who actually cooperate with each other and share knowledge, understand how to improve the work process and deliver this knowledge to management that can then implement it. So, for example, these behavior are like suggestion to improve the flow of true output in the production process, better delivery of the service, improving customer relations with customers, what else? Layout of machinery if you have. So all these little things that contribute to the bottom line of the organization through the experience accumulated by workers working in the place. So this, how do you encourage this kind of behavior? The encouragement of this kind of behavior is encapsulated in what is called the employment relationship. This characterizes what is the deal at work and set the context in which workers actually carry out their work. So this relationship is based on two elements. On the one hand, you have the requirements. The requirements is what company expects from its workers, okay? The type of task and contextual performance which is desirable. So if employees exert effort drawing on their skills, the requirements direct the effort in the right directions toward desirable behaviors. And then to match these requirements must be matched by inducements, which are broadly defined incentive, not only monetary. Do we have monetary and non-monetary? Where the non-monetary probably are more important because these are issues of job design. So to design jobs that are interesting, challenging, autonomy at work. It is a matter of organizational cultures and norms on how work is done and behavior, provision of learning opportunity, provision of career progressions, the level of trust with management and the quality of the relationship with management. So all these elements basically are the set of inducement that the organization can help to support workers when they exert their efforts to draw on the skills. So the skill utilization, so the way the organizations leverage their worker skills depend or is affected by the employment relationship they offer, the configurations. So you can imagine that if organization ask workers to engage in performance, then they have high requirements and they have to match these high requirements with high inducements. Okay. So in a sense, when you see let's say the expression of skills at work, it is a combination of having the skills and be willing to produce the effort to engage the skill. If the skill is not produced or is not observed, might be a case of lacking the skills or might be a case of not having given the instruction or directions on that is actually the utilization that skill is welcome, and maybe not supporting the workers in the production of that skills. Let me show an example. This is what we are talking about. This is a straight line next to the border of a road. Obviously, it is not the fact that this person didn't remove the branch is not of a lack of skills. I mean, everybody can remove a branch, but the fact that the branch has not been removed is because there was no incentive in producing this contextual performance. Okay, where the contextual performance would have been to stop the machine, get down, remove the branch, and then continue drawing the line. On the left, we have a very simple case. To the right, we have a more, let's say, dramatic example. This is Boeing. They've been producing in a certain in North Carolina a certain model of the jet plane, passenger jet plane, and had an enormous amount of problems, of quality problems. And if you look at what the culture was at Boeing, was definitely a culture where management was actually paying attention to the deadlines, to stick to the deadline, but it was not listening to what the workers were telling them in terms of little quirks and quality issues that they actually observed during production. So in a sense, there was this contextual performance being performed, but it was ignored by management. The same distinction is really well expressed by Homer Simpson. So Homer Simpson here is talking to his daughter Lisa and say, if you don't like your job, okay, this is what does it mean here is not I hate what I'm doing, but you're not treating well. You don't find yourself treated as you should in the working place. And so what do you do if this happens? It's not that you strike. You just go in every day and do it really half-assed. It means you actually don't engage the full set of your skills. You go in, you engage only a part of your skills to produce a job of lower quality. Because this is the point. Whenever we have in place this employment relationship, things happen. New technology is imported. There are new competitors in the market. The organization changed the layout or changed the management or the work process. And every time this happens, this employment, this balance between requirements and inducement needs to be adjusted. If this is not happening, what happens? The workers restrict access to their skills. It's not that they don't have the skills they have. They just don't engage them. Okay, so for organization, it's sometimes useful to think whether is it really true that my workers don't have the skills, or they have the skills, I don't want to engage it. Learning is one of these behaviors. If you send me to training, is okay. But if you ask me to learn autonomously, that I have to have a self-directed learning, this is a voluntary behavior that falls under the contextual performance. So now I close, and I close with a couple of remarks. No? So first of all, if we recognize that organizations might not be able to produce this homogeneous demand for a set of skills, can we really speak, or is it useful to speak about employability skills? And if the skill supply, what we do in terms of skills and the production of skills is linked to can be compared as an industrial policy, no? Because if we tailor a certain the supply of skills to the demand of a certain skills, we implicitly support the organizations, the organizational structure, which is actually producing this demand of skills. So if we produce the skills supply that is demanded by organization adopting a tayloristic organizations, work organization, then we supporting them implicitly. Okay, so this is a kind of I would like to think in terms of what we do with skills in terms of an industrial policy. And when we have to silver workers, I think we need to take into consideration that they do have a weak incentive to learn. But sometimes the critique that we hear about their behavior, like not being interested and not being flexible, I wonder how much of that is actually learned behavior. So that they've been spent a long part of their career in environment which were not actually supporting or suggesting that learning and development of skill was actually useful, because as we saw in the German presentations with the Stettes, it was clear that the organizational the way jobs are designed and what the organization does doesn't depend on the share of older worker. Skills can be developed also with a higher share of older workers. Depends on how the workplace context is organized. What I want to stress is that the strong point of where the strong point of older workers is, of silver workers, they have the social capital. They know how to they essentially in turning this individual human capital into an organizational resource. So, for example, they are the ones that when a new technology is introduced, have the relationship to gather all the informations about what kind of improvement can be done to tailor the introduction of this new technology to the context, to the workplace, to the specificity of the workplace. And they also have the channel and maybe also the, how do you say, the status to bring all this information up to management. So there are comparative advantage is in this, the social capital, in this element of contextual performance. But then for this to happen and for capitalize on this, you have to keep people in employment, and you cannot ask them to change sector or companies, because the moment they change, they lose their social capital, and so their comparative advantage, in a sense, also vanishes. And with this, I leave you. Thank you.
Sorry, thanks a lot, in particular for this approach about the older works at the end, with the hint that what we assume, at least in terms of flexibility, will devalue their skills. Any comments on this? Otherwise, I had to look at the time, and we're a little bit over the time, but don't want to care too much. Any questions on this? Sorry for the Annette, was it a hand?
Yeah, I was trying to find the button to say hands up. Just a very quick question to the last presenter. I really like this, let's say, opening up and criticizing also the policies in terms of employability skills. But may I just ask you to link it to the first presentations we had on the technological and the non-technological skills demands which the employers say they have? I mean, these are parts of employability skills too. So how do you compare these two then, or is it different? You know what I mean?
No, I totally know what you mean. To me, okay, we all work with computers, okay, but what we do with these computers is a very different things. Sometimes we just use to enter data, or sometimes we use them to make a very complex computations or simulations. So the context in which a technology is introduced will determine the way we use this technology and the skills that we need to use this technology, and how the technology will complement the skills. And what we don't see in surveys is organizations, how to say, when they substitute technology for skills, because we talk to employees, but they've been replaced, so we cannot really reach them. You see, so what we tend to see, in the organizations when we talk to employees, because of this self-selection thing, is that there is a positive relationship between skills and the use of technology. But this is the result of the selection that takes place, because in companies where skills are not appreciated and the technology is a substitute for the skills, you don't observe the employees telling you, yes, I use my skills in this way with this technology, because it's been replaced. So the assumption that skills and technology goes together, it is also, is affected by this sample selection mechanism. But we have to take a view that organizations are very heterogeneous, and what they do with the same technology is just as heterogeneous.
Thank you very much. Good.
I know that Jolanta wants to give a summary. She warned me that I will not be satisfied with it, but nevertheless, I'll leave it to you to try to summarize, Jolanta.
No, in fact, to be honest, I'm really afraid, because I think that it's too ambitious to have 4 presentations in so limited time. And you know that we should finish about 10 minutes ago, and I know that time is precious, and time management is also one of the skills that we somehow evaluate. But in fact, you know, thinking about the whole afternoon and this 4 presentation, I'm really convinced that we should still have more a kind of the how to say a much more attention to the diverse world which we have. And one of the contexts was what was mentioned already, working environment and working conditions. And here I have to maybe mention, Andreas, that in fact we, thanks to the EIWO, we prepared the paper comparable between UK, Germany, Sweden and Poland, when in fact we, but not in the quantitative way, because it's difficult, but in qualitative way, we try to catch how working environment can be supportive or not supportive in the context of even appreciation of a person in their performance for the employer, because I think that this is the issue, that we can have many skills and we evaluate that we have the skills, but then on the other side we have the employer, and the employer has to have a direct need to use these skills in the proper time, in a proper way. So I do somehow hope that this is a kind of the beginning of the discussion, and maybe in 1 year, maybe in the same team or maybe in a bit different team, we can somehow follow up and see in what way we can be updated. Also, having such data, I also happy to see the German data mentioned, but it was before COVID. And we also trying to catch other behaviors and strategies. So, and I know that Annette is doing great job as an expert in that field. So I'm really, I see a lot of points which I would like to continue in the discussion, but I know that time is limited. So this is many thanks from the whole EIWO group that you spent time with us today. And if I can say, I'm dissatisfied that we could not follow that discussion today, but I do hope that Gulin, and thank you for organizing and inviting us, that we can continue that maybe next year. And we see what changed in UK, Poland, Germany, and from the perspective of Cedefop with the comments of other experts.
Yeah, thanks a lot. What is left for me is, first of all, to thank you all for your impressive inputs. And of course, it would be nice to get your, I think I have the presentations already, right, Gulin? I think we have them so far, and come back to this. Maybe simply to announce that we are also planning further events, also a final conference of this, but probably in 25, a little bit ahead of us. And just maybe also an announcement, if you have PhD students or postdocs, at least that are interested in the topic, there will be a masterclass event at the Nordic Congress of Gerontology in June in Stockholm. So if there's an interest, it's on aging and work, not just on skills, but skills is a component. And Per Jensen was in, but is not here anymore.
He left. I noticed that he left.
Is one of the keynote speakers there. And so if there's interest in this, it's in particular for junior researchers, of course. If you have candidates for this, just let us know. I suggest that it's already next month, but I think we have 2 or 3 seats, places open there, and we will come back to you definitely and to continue the discussion. Thanks a lot for today. And yeah, I look forward to maintaining the contact.
Ciao, ciao. Thanks a lot.
Thanks a lot. It was a pleasure.
Thank you.